It's all about timing.
Absolutely. Good evening, one and all. Welcome along. It is episode 44 in season 3 of the UK Dallas Cowboys podcast. We're running a new show tonight. I'm joined by Mike, and of course, as you can see down there on the bottom of the screen, we have our great friend from Blogging the Boys, RJ. How are things?
Whoop whoop. Yeah. Sorry.
It's going great. Great to be with you guys. Sorry about the delay from last week. Just another day. Only like 8 months left until, or I don't know, 7 months, 6 months until things get a little bit more serious. But it's good. Good to be with you.
Yeah,
absolutely. And it's great to see that you're dressed in your Man United finest tonight, RJ. Unfortunately, Jamie couldn't be with us after the events of Sunday.
You know what? I'm sorry to say that Jamie supports a pretty rotten club with rotten people and rotten supporters. I would have thought that all Englishmen would have been people and just generally people of high character. But what can you expect from Leeds? I mean, it's just the way it goes sometimes.
And of course, since we've last seen you, RJ, I think you've had a new addition. So congratulations from all of us. How is Rael doing?
Thank you very much. He spent the first 6 weeks of his life in the NICU, and so that was a stressful time for my wife and I, just trying to get there every day and learning to balance things, through that lens, and obviously still amid the pandemic. But he's been home now. This Saturday will mark 7 weeks. So he's almost 3 months old. It's just been perfect. I mean, it's been everything that people talk about parenthood to be, in the sense that we're not sleeping either. Everything is kind of a blur and chaos, but it's wonderful. And I'm just so blessed to have my family, to have my friends like you. So I'm a pretty lucky guy.
Absolutely. And Mike, since we were last on the show, I believe you've also had a new addition. So I seem to be the odd one out in this show.
Yeah. Well, funnily enough, me and RJ, we seem to be in sync. So yeah, she's about 3 months old as well. So one boy, one girl, shoot to the left and the right, as they say.
Very good. So tonight's show and this show on a Tuesday moving forward. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a bit more in-depth look at some of the prospects, who they are, where they would fit in, and why they would fit in with us here in the Dallas Cowboys. And we're going to look mainly at offensive line, but again, I'm outnumbered. I have 2 Texas A&M Aggies on the same show as me, and I'm going to throw the floor open to both of you because 2 players that are likely to be in our range at 24, Kenyon Green, DeMarvion Leal. I'll throw it over to you, gents.
Go on. Do you want to take it, RJ, or?
I mean, I'm still in the early part of the draft process. Obviously, I don't have any real favorites. I don't have any real hard lines in the sand yet, as far as my own personal preferences. And so right now, I mean, I can be persuaded either way. I mean, obviously, Kenyon Green, was wise enough to choose the highest institution of learning that the United States has to offer. But I'm open, and I'm not even certain that that's the direction I want to go at 24. I mean, obviously, a lot of it depends on the way the board falls. We got a long way to wait, come draft night. But that's both a good thing and a disheartening thing, just because it kind of feels a little bit. It doesn't have as much juice as it has in years past.
Yeah, I mean, Leal for me at 24 would be a bit rich.
Yeah.
I like, for me, I don't have him in the first round. Kenyon Green, on the other hand, is a guy that I do. Is a guy who in run blocking, especially in the zone blocking scheme, which is something that the Cowboys do use. And he's, when you go through the history of him playing, because he has played up and down the line, he seems to be better on the left than the right. And that, ironically, seems to be the part of the Cowboys' offensive line that struggled the most. So he fits that as well. 5-star recruit, and he's Texas born and bred. His high school as well, because I went back to go and have a look. His high school with him leading the way, in terms of that, we're averaging 496 yards per game. Yeah. So he's done it his entire career, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I mean, if you'd like to go a little bit deeper, and this is why we're delighted to get Mike out from behind the microphone, because Mike has actually, you've done the pro scouting systems and you have done an in-depth report on nearly every guy in this draft class. So, I mean, why is Kenyon Green the right kind of pick at 24? And why would he be a pick that you would take maybe over potentially a Tyler Linderbaum or, you know, a Daniel Falele, a Zion Johnson?
Well, Zion Johnson is another guy. I mean, we'll talk about him as well. But for me, what he's got is versatility. He's the aggressiveness as well. So versatile, as we talked about, but he's better on the left than the right. Good feet, and he gets low as well. He understands the concept of lowest man wins. So when you go and watch it, he always... I don't know how he gets so low. It's scary, especially for a guy his size. I mean, he's like 6'4", 320-something pounds. So that's a big guy. Can shuffle, can mirror, quick feet, as I said, and he can anchor as well at the position, which is really important. There are issues with him with his pass sets, which you can talk about, because he just seems to stop his feet from moving once he gets contact, which is a bit of an odd thing to see, especially for a guy his size. But I mean, as I say, with Green, is the scheme versatility. I try and get you my points and notes. Flexibility and strength. Very versatile. And another thing as well is he will get into the second level. He can move back into there. But as I say, the biggest issue for him, as I say, it always falls into the same schemes of that he's putting his hands in the wrong place. More inconsistency. It's hands and feet, basically, is his two problems. And, you know, a lot of people will talk about his statistics, but I tend to ignore the first year. Like, have a look at his next 2 years, and if I can try and get his stats up for the last 2 years. In pass blocks, nearly 800 pass blocks and only 1 sack.
Wow.
Yeah.
Those are great numbers. RJ, you've been watching this guy as an Aggies fan for the last 3 seasons. It's 3 seasons he's been with the Aggies, is it? Or has he played 4?
3, you know,
so, I mean, what are your thoughts on Kenyon Green? Is he a good fit for the scheme we're trying to play, or is there a player you would consider a better fit?
Well, so first of all, I saw Paul lurking in the comments, watching on YouTube. And in case anybody didn't know, you can now hear Paul on the Blog on the Voice podcast network with Meg Murray on the World's team. We needed some UK Cowboys blood on our side of the pond, and so Paul did a great job in the first episode. Looking forward to number 2 on Sunday. But I mean, it's such a weird place to be at. I mean, these are questions we haven't really had to ask for a long time, you know, when it comes to the Cowboys. And so it's different. You know, this team is very different than who they were when they first assembled this group, you know, and time has passed, and, you know, it's all been a waste, and that's a hard thing to kind of come to terms with. And so I think, you know, when you factor in, it's hard. I mean, last year, you know, with the Cowboys picking at 10, there's a really small, finite number of ways the draft can go. And so you can really, really make your peace with, okay, I'm fine with options A, B, C, or D, and it's going to be one of these. And so Kenyon Green, I think he fit, you know, if the right dominoes fall, then he makes sense. Yeah. The player is a fit. And I don't think that's a question at all. Yeah. It's just a matter of, do things shake out that way? And this, you know, it's harder for me, at least, when the Cowboys have had picks in this range, or 24 to 27 spots or whatever. It's harder to fall in love with somebody. That's why I like, out of a protective sort of nature for myself, I'm protecting myself from falling in love with Kenyon Green, because I think he might go to Philly. I mean, and so it's hard to really, really dig yourself in. But there's no question that the player is an absolute fit for what the Cowboys want to do. And I suppose that is the original point.
Yeah. And I mean, if you look at the physical traits of the players, Mike said, 6'4", 320. That's what you need in your modern interior offensive line players. So one of the biggest problems we had last season, obviously Connor Williams with penalties, but didn't have enough sand in his pants. He was barely fighting fit at 285. So is that extra body weight gonna be an issue for Kenyon Green? Is it going to help him stand up better in the modern NFL?
Yeah, I mean, you want your inside guys to be more squattier, and Kenyon Green does have that, and his frame as well fits it, because a lot of people talk about when he was playing in tackle and that he could play tackle, but because he's short and squattier, you don't want him on the outside. You want him more on the inside. Because and definitely on the right hand side, you seem to struggle more than he did on the left. So as we were saying, in terms of fit as well, it also doesn't just fit what the Cowboys do. It fits what they need as well, which is the left hand side of the line where they were struggling. Well, center and left, or center and left guard specifically, and center is the only position really Ken Green never played.
I think the guys on the draft show, I think it was either last Tuesday or last Thursday, they found out he had taken one offensive snap under center. So he has played all five, but as we say, one at center. But
he did. He did as well. Yeah, in 2020. Yeah.
Once I think it was against Bama of all teams. Which was frightening.
Yeah, I'll try and find that out now.
Yeah, but I mean, RJ is 320 pounds, 6'3", as Mike said, squat. Is that what you're looking for in an interior offensive lineman?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's it prohibit you from being interested. I mean, I don't think it's a red flag by any means. I mean, it's Again, I think the player's talented enough. I think if we start to fall into these particulars and start to have these measurable limits, that's how you end up with Taco Charlton over TJ Watt. And I mean, I hate to be that cliche, but it's true. I mean, and
it is.
I'm not a scout by any means, but I mean, it's like the great scouts often saying that you scout the player, you trust who the player is on tape, and Kenyon Green is really reliable in that sense.
Yeah.
It's a very good point. One of the biggest questions, and no one seems to be able to get to the bottom of this, is obviously Connor Williams will get paid somewhere else in this offseason. It's unlikely he comes back to the Dallas Cowboys. And over the last 2 seasons, there seems to have been a reluctance to move La'el Collins back into left guard. Everyone in Cowboys Nation seems to want it. Why is there a reluctance to do it? Is it a case of they don't want to admit they're wrong, or?
Basically, that's what I would put it down to.
I mean, I don't know. I've been really wounded by the Cowboys this entering this offseason, and so I will admit that I'm a little bit more jaded than usual. I think that, and I feel like anytime I talk to you guys, there's a natural jadedness to England. I don't know what it is. It's darker all the time. It's heavier. So I feel like I have to be a little bit of a deeper thinker when I talk to you guys. But I don't know that he'll be even good. I don't this is one of those things that I don't think it's just this if it truly were this magic poof of a fix, I'm not again, you run into comments that are oh, you're not in the building every day. Trust the coaches. The coaches know what they're doing. But I don't think they're incompetent enough. I think they are to some degree, but I don't think they're incompetent enough to where if they were staring this magic solution in the face to where they would just poo-poo it. I just can't see that for any for my money. And so, you mentioned Connor Williams. It would have made sense to kick him out to tackle. I mean, if you were gonna do that, you should have done that then. And so I think it's a combination of not wanting to admit that, but more than anything, he might not be that. It's been a long time. I mean, people act like it was just last year that he was playing left guard. It's been a very long time, and I am not a Connor Williams fan by any stretch. And he made the decision to go to the worst institution of higher learning in the United States. But I do think that we're sitting here, a lot of people, talking about obviously Michael Gallup and Randy Gregory and Dalton Schultz and Jaron Kearse, and I love Jaron Kearse, but I do think we are somewhat like overlooking Connor Williams' importance to the team, and I think so many people are so willing to cast him aside. Good riddance, whatever. All the penalties, I get all that, but he has been value. Like he's if he's your worst offensive lineman, I think you're doing all right for yourself. And I know that that isn't what people want to hear, but I mean, I would kind of rather have him at left guard and keep Lyle Collins at right tackle personally.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's the old sentiment, isn't it? If it's not broken, don't fix it. I know some people say, well, it is broken, but, you know, Collins is doing his job out there, albeit you can argue about inconsistencies. But last year, the line was inconsistent. We even spoke about Tyler Biadasz, and people are saying, you know, there is a guy that needs to go. That game against San Francisco, the last game of the season, and I hate to bring that up, Tyler Biadasz was actually, in fact, statistically the best offensive lineman in that game. And Zach Martin was one of the worst.
Yeah.
So it was a problem up and down that line. Me personally, I think the easiest way to fix the offensive line, I don't know what you reckon, RJ, I think the best way to fix the offensive line is get an offensive line coach that knows what he's doing.
I mean, I think the best way to fix it is to get some consistency. I mean, whether you're a fan of Connor Williams or Lyle Collins or, you know, Terrence Steele or Connor McGovern, you know, pick a lane, stay in the lane. I mean, the Thanksgiving Day game was kind of obviously the most flagrant example of indecisiveness. And that just, you know, that's tough to explain. I mean, that's tough to, there's so many things the staff did over the second half of the season that are tough to justify, and that's one of them. And so, I mean, I can't understand why they did that. I can't understand a lot of what they're doing, and they seem to have fallen out of favor with Connor Williams. But that's the other thing is that people harp on the penalties for Connor Williams, and that's fine. But I would argue that Lyle has let the team down way more than Connor Williams. I mean, Connor had the penalties, and that's really, you see that, you know, in games, but Lyle left himself unavailable to his team twice. I mean, in back-to-back years. And so that's harder, I think, to square than it is Connor Williams. And I think because Lyle was this kind of like bonus player that the Cowboys landed 7 years ago. It just, you know, people don't hold him to the same standard. I forgot who said this. Somebody said this on a podcast, and I hate that I'm forgetting who. But if Lyle Collins was truly taken in the first round, the way he was projected to be, obviously, people would. I don't know that people view him the way he does. I mean, you know, it was tragic the way he obviously fell out of the draft, but if he's a first-round pick, I think he's viewed as a bust. He's viewed as somebody who's not living up to potential, but things are a little bit different because of the path that he ultimately went down.
Yeah. I agree with you there. That does hold a lot of weight with the fans on where you get taken. Agree.
Yeah. Like, I mean, I'll admit I've never thought of it in those ways, but it does make an awful lot of sense in that, undrafted free agent, but... And as you say, if he was drafted in the first round, we would be saying things an awful lot different. Considering the abuse that we have thrown at a second-round pick in Connor Williams, who I think very rarely missed a game in his 4 seasons with the Cowboys. Basically, last year, he was the only constant on, or not last year, but say 2020, he was the only constant on the O-line that we had. You know, if you compare the two players like that, you're kind of going, I definitely see RJ's point in terms of, you know, you can throw around he's a first-round talent, but he's not playing like a first-round talent.
Yeah.
But moving along, and as we said, we're going to take a look in depth at some of the other O-line guys around that might fall available to us. So, Mike, I know you had 2 guys that you were interested in taking. So, if you wanna start with one of them.
So, should we stick with versatility and go with Zion Johnson then?
Yeah, go for it.
There's a guy who literally has played all the positions. You know, we said about with Kenyon Green playing that one snap at center. Although Zion Johnson statistically doesn't, if you go and watch him in the Senior Bowl, they had him playing center and taking snaps, and he even stayed on late. After all the guys are finishing on him, there's Zion Johnson still sitting there throwing balls between his leg into trash cans because he's practicing snapping the ball because he's trying to do as much as he can. And I think that Zion Johnson is more of a better fit for the Cowboys than Kenyon Green. And it's Boston College at the end of the day. And Boston College, as you know, RJ, they churn out offensive linemen like they're going out of business over there. But he's a guy, he transferred from Davidson, goes over, to Boston College, and each year is got progressively better. You can go through it statistically. And he's one of those guys that you just go across the board with him and everything is always above average. You go, stand run blocking, gap power, zone blocking, all of it. You just go, it's above average, it's above average, it's above average. Like, that's the type of guy, because then you can build on something from that. And I think that the guy, it's just because he has the consistency as well. And I'll try and find his stats because it was something that I perked up on and I was like, holy Jesus. So here we go. 1,000, just over 1,000 pass blocks and 3 sacks. Tie in with that as well. In his last year, he only had 2 quarterback pressures, and that's on 360 passing block snaps.
Mm-hmm.
So he's got it. I think he's a day one starting guard, especially on the left again. He primarily only played on the left whenever he did play. He's never played on the right. So again, fills not just what the Cowboys are trying to do in terms of the rule line, but he also fits again a need, which is what. And the good thing is if you do decide that you want to move La'el Collins, or you've got issues let's go down the road of what you want to do with Terrence Steele, La'el Collins, and Tyron Smith. If you have an issue, you can move Zion if you need to. You can kick him out because he can do it. And the guy's he's just built. He's a massive guy.
Yeah. So, RJ, if I throw it over to you, is Zion Johnson a guy you're interested in as a starting, say, left guard for this season?
Yeah, I think that, Mike really covered, I think, how high of a floor he has. And that's kind of my takeaway. And that's like, at this point, that's what you're doing. I mean, it's hard to bring in, the Cowboys have been really fortunate to do it several times over, but it's hard to bring in a rookie offensive lineman to start. And again, kind of going back to the Connor point of like, I think we overlook how difficult that is because Connor handled it fairly well. And so if you're going to entrust that position to a rookie in a season that is pretty do or die, pretty make or break, I think it's harder to come up with a higher floor, with a higher level of consistency. It's harder to put your eggs in a basket that is potentially going to yield as high of a floor as Zion can. And so that's a safe pick, and that's what this is going to be. This is going to be a safe, chalk, boring, mundane. what can help the Cowboys the most from day one pick, and he qualifies for all those things.
Very good.
Yeah, and the only thing I will say, the difference between Kenyon and Zion is Kenyon Green does have quite a good reach, where Zion is not that type of guy. He's not as aggressive in that sense. He's more of a finesse type blocker, where Kenyon Green, he's going to get into your face. He's going to get in your grill and get in close and just shuffle you around, where Zion is a bit more, because he doesn't have the reach, and he's a little bit shorter than Kenyon Green as well. So that, and sometimes when you see him lose, it's because he's this finesse blocker and he loses leverage that way. But there's just, bear in mind, this is at a college level. Once they get into the NFL level, things like putting on bulk, putting on weight, putting on strength, they're all things you can build on and work on quite easily. If the technique's there, that's the main thing. And that's what, we could talk about the offensive lineman in the first round, but the first round really, and I said it on the first draft show we did, I just want a good player. I don't care where all right, don't draft a quarterback or a kicker just because they're good or a long snapper. But if they're a good player, no, I don't want a running back either. There's no first round. There's no first round running backs for me anyway. But
I don't think there's a second one either.
Plenty. No, I got plenty of seconds. I just haven't got any firsts. But, just give me a good player. And like Kenyon Green, Zion Johnson, they fall into that bracket. They are a good player. They are a guy that you can put in straight away and play them.
Yeah. So the next guy that you are going to talk about, I believe, is Trevor Penning who is Northern Iowa.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
yeah. FCS, yeah, Northern Iowa.
There we go. So take it away on Trevor Penning.
So what was funny is because, like, obviously I don't watch much FCS, but I think I was actually speaking to Bright, and I was just like going through it, and I was just like, who is this Trevor Penning guy? And all of a sudden I thought, no, I need to go and watch this, and you just watch it, and the guy. So at the FCS level, what you want to see is, like, as I've said to you before, is when you're there and you're looking at these top tier prospects, if he's like a dad playing with boys in the park, like his kids at the over the like the dad, the over competitive dad playing with his kids, and he's knocking the ball out of the park all the time and running bases. That's what you want to see. You want to see the guy that just looks completely out of place in that level and just dominating all the time. And Trevor Penning does. He throws guys around in the FCS like an empty tracksuit. It literally does. And he's first team in the first team all Missouri Valley. So he dominated in his actual conference, and he's got this mass bank. He's a huge guy. He's massive. Hold on, if I try and get it up, the guy is he's 6'7", 328 pounds. He's a big guy, so he does anchor really well. And what's ironic is he's this massively aggressive guy. And I like this when I heard something about him, is that he plays too aggressive. And that I don't mind, because I'd rather, as a coach, be telling my player to calm down than trying to get my player to play more. It's easier for them to be high and come down than it is to be low and come up, if that makes sense.
Yeah. It does. But RJ, if I throw it over to you in terms of Trevor Penning, is this a guy that you've looked at yet, or have you any initial thoughts on him?
I haven't personally. We do have our Talking the Draft show that comes out actually tomorrow on Wednesdays on the Blog of the Boys Podcast Network. I know Connor and Mark are already deep in their research, and so I do kind of rely on them to lead me so I can pretend to know what I'm talking about. But I mean, but that, like, I agree with, like, in a general sense, that that prism, that archetype, like that's what you want. That you're in some ways drafting for qualities and drafting for traits, and like if the quality and trait you can find is the biggest monster in the world, like that's what you're going for. I mean, that was a high point to Tyron, 11 years ago now. I mean, he was just he was very different from everybody around him, which was remarkable given his age at the time. And so, I mean, and that's it is going to be boring. I mean, like, the offensive line, I mean, I applaud Mike. It's not a position that's easy to get this excited about, because you are just looking for these specific qualities. But that's just kind of the boat the Cowboys are in right now. Is they need help at the most boring possible places.
Yeah. He is, honestly. When you watch it, and he's already got technique down. So you say traits. So you're looking at the kick slide, and he's showing you the kick slide, and he's able to do it. He's able to anchor. And I'm trying to remember off the top of my head, and we'll know more when the combine comes out. I'm pretty certain his arm length is about 30. I think it's 35 inch. So he's got a really, really long reach, and he could do it. And he's just this massive bully. And it's almost a detriment that when people say, well, what's his weaknesses, is that he's just so big that the faster defensive pass rushers, which you see he played against Iowa State and had just a stinker of a game. But it was because obviously Iowa State's style of play and that moving the slanting defensive line, that when they're coming across him and they're able to break inside, he's not there quick enough, because he's just, you imagine he's just this massive, being that's there. It just isn't quick enough to react to the faster people. The old David and Goliath sort of situation. But you do see that with him. But, if you want him on that gap power on the outside, he's your man. He's ideal for it. And I think if he goes to the right team, I'm not sure if the Cowboys are the right team, because here's my problem with taking a tackle. I don't know what you reckon on this, RJ. The trouble you got with Tyron Smith is not that he's a bad left tackle. Like, he is like if you say, is he in the top 32 of the best left tackles in the NFL? The answer is yes. So then you go, is he in the top 10? The answer is yes. Is he in the top 5? The answer is yes still. So you got a top 5 left tackle that you're playing. The only drawback is that he's a top 5 left tackle in the NFL for half a season. And that's the issue. But, like, do I really want to spend a first-round draft off the basis that, because there's the possibility that you draft a guy like Trevor Penning in the first round of the 24th pick, and he spends his first season on the bench.
I mean, this is the Rashawn Slater conversation we had
exactly
a year ago, right? I mean,
yeah.
And so, I mean, and like, I don't know. I mean, is Tyron a top 32, top 10 tackle? Certainly. Is he a top 5 tackle? I mean, like, we're starting to see his game also regress. Like, in addition to, you know, and believe me, I'm not going to sit here and say that Tyron isn't talented, but, you know, like, at one point, you know, it was prior to 2020, it was, okay, you know what, Tyron's going to have to miss 3 games a year. That's totally worth it. I'll totally take that, you know, and the problem with it is, like, if you knew what half of the season it was, you could adjust, you could plan, but you have no idea. It's not even like it's not 1 half and 1 half. It's 2 games and 3 games and 3 games and 1 game. And it's so impossible to, you know, establish any consistency, let alone the fact that the Cowboys are also messing with it themselves. And so, at a certain point, you just have to move on. I mean, and I don't know if it's right now. I mean, that's a really difficult, you know, line to cross, because is it worth not having the headache? And it's not Tyron's fault. I mean, it's his health. But is it worth not having the headache? Yeah, on one hand, but is it worth the downgrade? I don't know. Like my point is, like, his regression in talent is starting to meet the point where I'd rather have a lesser player and know I have that player 100% of the time, if it's Terrence Steele or whatever, than deal with this. I mean, it is, you know, I feel for Dak, I feel for Zeke, I feel for everybody, but I feel for Tyron, because it's really, really difficult. And so I don't know, and there's so many hard decisions they have to make this year, because you're right, that's a hard decision in general. Do we burn this first round pick on somebody who's not going to play at all this year? Do you do that in a year, if you're Mike McCarthy, where you have to have success? I mean, you have to. And so, because if you're Mike McCarthy, who cares what happens to Tyron Smith in 2023? Exactly. If you're not around, like, it's not going to affect you. So in that sense, I could see them steering away from this and just hoping and praying that Tyron can survive.
Yeah. And that was going to be my next point, is that obviously Mike McCarthy, we know he's in the hot seat. So, like, at the moment, does he want to? He's not really looking at, do we take this draft pick and then it might be a case that I have him next year? Because Mike McCarthy might not even be in that seat next year. And if you hear the rumors, you know, he's already kind of out the door. And not out the door, but, you know, he's made all those comments about it being like Hunger Games and all the rest of it. So there's something behind the scenes going on there, for sure. Do you know what I mean? So, and that's why I just, because like we going back to the Trevor Penning thing, that if there's a guy on the offensive line that I think will do the most on the bench press, it'll be Trevor Penning. I'm telling you.
But like, create an off season where they cut Amari, where Gallup leaves. And so Trevor's there, but one of the Ohio State receivers is there. I mean, like, and you're Mike McCarthy. I mean, what do you do it? You know what I'm saying? Like, Trevor might be awesome, but, like, it's at a certain, Kenyon Green's there too, but you are focused on right now, if that's the case. And that's where, I mean, you laid it out. I mean, this Hunger Games, nobody is on the same timeline, and so they have. It's impossible, and that's why I am kind of jaded. It's impossible to have success in that environment.
Yeah, and the other thing as well when we're talking about the line is I'm looking at players, because we don't know in terms of development. I think Terrence Steele will develop again, but nobody's talking about the other guys that we still got. Matt Farniok, Josh Ball, albeit we haven't seen them, but how are they developed? And only these guys know. So, like, we're talking about, we need offensive line. We have offensive linemen. We just, as us outside the building, they're the question marks. So that's why we're saying this. And then I just think with those question marks, do you really want to go out? And as RJ says, like, you know, you're talking about wide receiver. Look at the linebacker core. The linebacker core consists of 2 guys.
Well, and one of those guys you're counting on rebounding, you know, from a serious injury in Jabril Cox. And so, actually, you know, this was something I asked him the other day. What part, like, what can you say as a Cowboys fan you are 100% confident in? Because I can think of one thing. What can you say that you would bet your house, you would bet your life savings on? I'm interested in your list if it's longer than one thing.
Dak.
That's not my one thing. But
No?
I can't say any one thing, because if you look at last season, Micah Parsons' sophomore slump could possibly happen. Is Trayvon Diggs going to get another 11 interceptions? I don't know. And they were the two bright points.
My one thing is Micah, to be very clear. That's the one thing.
Yeah.
If I have to bet on one thing, being a Hall of Famer, having success, whatever, it's Micah. I think it's fair to regress on Dak. I mean, I'm with, like, Mike. I would love to be able to sit here and say Dak. I would love that more than anything, but I can't. I can't. I mean,
I get where you're going.
He was awful, and so I mean, when you have that situation, like, it's very possible in 2 years' time this roster looks completely different. I mean, like, and I mean completely different. It's just at that phase.
Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, and I get what you're saying. The only issue I have with the Micah Parsons thing is that because there's talk about DeMarcus Lawrence being out the door, being a cap casualty.
Yeah.
Randy Gregory's quite expensive, but you're going to get a hometown discount. How far that stretches for the cap for the Cowboys is yet to be seen. We don't know yet.
Yeah.
So there's defensive end already a problem. Linebacker's already a problem. So Micah Parsons, where are you putting him? Because obviously this year he had all the pieces in place to be able to roam freely and be that defensive nuisance, which is what he was, the defensive playmaker. And if you try and say, this is what we're going to do with Micah Parsons, we're either going to put him as a pass rusher or we're going to try and play him as a will linebacker, for argument's sake, then all of a sudden you just take away what makes Micah Parsons special. What makes him special is being that odd piece that you move around where they're going, is he in coverage? Is he blitzing? Who's the man that's going to pick him up? We just don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, I would love to play Micah at edge all the time. I don't know anybody who like strongly disagrees with that. But what I don't want for him is to get Byron Jones. I mean, like, pick one. You got to pick one right now, and that's it. Like, we don't need any of this, back and forth. I realize he's supremely talented and he can float, but give him don't do him that disservice to where you're moving him around constantly. You have to pick one. And you have to pick one to build the rest of your team. Like, if you're going to not re-sign Randy Gregory or if you're going to cut DeMarcus Lawrence, it better be because that's where Micah Parsons is playing all the time. If you're going to bring them both back, then okay, you have some freedom. But that's the difficult spot they're in.
Yeah. And I mean, like, look, let's have a chat about this, because it is something that seems to be out there in the ether, is that there is a potential that Amari Cooper is traded or cut, that DeMarcus Lawrence is traded or cut. We might not re-sign Randy Gregory because the cap is, it's not in a great place right now. So, I mean, do any or all of these things happen?
I'm inclined to believe, this is my own personal opinion guess, I think they probably cut Amari and DeMarcus Lawrence because I think that they are, and by they I mean friend of UK Cowboys Stephen Jones. I think Stephen is, and I want to be clear, I don't think I could do this job. Like, I'm not even qualified to do my job. But I think he's in over his head. I think he thinks he's the smartest guy in the room, and when you think that, you are in a bad spot. I mean, as an example, we had Tom Ra wrote about this at our site last week. When Stephen Jones sat down to negotiate with DeMarcus Lawrence, he lost. DeMarcus Lawrence played on the tag and then won and got paid.
And the injury.
When he sat down to negotiate with Zeke Elliott, he lost. And he didn't just lose, he lost to a running back. And no offense to Zeke, but like literally the most embarrassing loss you could take. And then he sat down to negotiate with Dak, and he lost big time. All these, like, he is 0 for 3 on his last, 3 events to try to win here. And he wants to sit here and educate us and talk about, well, the cap's a real thing. You know what, Steven? If you were better at this, you would have gotten the Dak deal done 2 years ago. He would not be on the books for $40 million a year. Like, if you had some forward thinking, some projecting going on, you would be able to massage this in earlier years. But that's not the issue here. And so it's my opinion that he believes they are in some quicksand. They need to flip some triggers. They need to create some space. Amari did not have a great season last year. And so I think that they believe that their guy, CD, who they drafted, can elevate himself to the next level. And that very well may be possible. But CD was also a disappointment this past year, which hurts me to say. And that would be really irresponsible and really reckless. And similar, to other players in the past, they might view Micah as their Superman. And they'll say, we'll cut DeMarcus Lawrence. Micah will do everything. Micah will take care of it. Micah will this, Micah will that. And then guess what happens? Micah's one man and can't do it all.
And that's what that was the point I was trying to make. The similar thing. That's what I don't want to happen with him in that sense. Totally with you. But I don't think Cooper goes, though. I disagree with you on the Amari Cooper part. Only because when you look that Gallup's only just had, let's assume that they do sign him back and he's back. Even still, he's not going to be ready rehab-wise August, which means game fit ready. He's not going to be ready till, should we say, argument's sake, October. So that means you start the season, if you cut Amari Cooper to make him a cap cash, then that means that you've got, as your starting wide receiver core as it stands right now, because Cedric Wilson's off the books as well. So that means you've got, and Noah Brown, he's gone as well. So there's just a bigger guy and your special teams as well. So that means that you've got CeeDee Lamb, Simi Fehoko, and TJ Vasher as your starting 3 wide receivers. Yeah, and that is without Dalton Schultz as well.
But they did that 4 years ago when they cut Dez. I mean, they went at it with Allen Hurns and Deontay Thompson and
wide receiver
Tavon
by
Austin.
committee.
Yeah, and so I mean, I could see a world where they get Gallup back on a 1-year deal, so Gallup can hit the market again next year. They get Cedric back, and then they feel confident in those 3. I mean, Michael Gillikin had a great write-up today in the Dallas Morning News. They have purposefully avoided Amari's deal as far as restructures and as far as playing with it. That is the one deal. They have touched everybody else's. They have very, very, very specifically kept this fail-safe available to themselves this particular offseason. And so on the one hand, if they decided 2 years ago when they signed him, we're going to cut him in 2022, on the one hand, in that sense, if that were the case, I would say then do it, then cut him. I'm a big fan of of making a decision before you're emotionally compromised. And so in that sense, I would say, okay, you had a plan. It's been 2 years in the making, then cut him. Stick to the plan, but obviously enact the other parts of the plan. I mean, I recognize that cutting Amari seems, foolish in a lot of ways. But I think that cutting DeMarcus Lawrence is arguably the bigger error. I think he is so underappreciated and undervalued and disrespected by a lot of Cowboys fans. And I think his presence is so valuable, especially if they don't sign Randy Gregory. And so if you have to cut one, I'd say cut Amari, especially because you've kind of been building towards this. Because I trust Micah on the defensive side of the ball to fill, the void. I think he can do it. But I think the point I'm trying to make is I think offensively you can make up for Amari a lot easier than you can on defense, even with Micah Parsons.
I just worry with CeeDee Lamb on his own because, like if you had said what CeeDee Lamb did in training camp last year and that carried through into the season, then I'm going, okay, you've got an emerging wide receiver 1 year. But it seemed to be he peaked at training camp and then he disappeared.
I mean, that's kind of the Cowboy way. I hate to say it. I mean, we sat here and we crowned CD. I mean, we crowned him before he took the field 2 years ago. And, I've thought about this, that, so much broke, as when Dak threw that touchdown to him in New England, it was like Cinderella's like life, midnight. Like, you know what I mean? Like everything transformed in that moment. Dak, regressed, CD regressed, the team regressed, the calf injury, on and on and on. It's disappointing. I mean, a year ago, if anybody argued with any of us and said, well, Justin Jefferson is better than CeeDee Lamb, we'd say that's stupid, that's crazy. CeeDee didn't even have Dak for a whole year. How can you say that? Blah, blah, blah. Yeah. There's no question. There's no Justin Jefferson is so much better than CeeDee Lamb, and that sucks to admit. But it's kind of where they are right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, in terms of the guys that I picked out for the offensive line, and I kind of cheated. I talked to Mike about this at the weekend, and this was something our other great friend of the show, Brian Broadus, brought up. If I could interest you in trading Amari Cooper, and you ended up getting a top 10 pick from the New York Jets, and you were then able to draft Charles Cross from Mississippi State, how would you feel then?
Do I have to spend that pick there, or can I just have a top 10 pick? I mean,
you can have a top 10 pick.
Yeah, I mean, I'll trade Amari. I mean, at that point, I'll do it. I mean, because at that point, the return on your investment is bigger. I mean, you gave up, what was it, the 27th overall pick that became Jonathan Abram. I mean, so, your return on investment is greater at that point. And, I mean, his days are numbered, I mean, in Dallas. Like, he's not going to be here for a decade or something like that. So, it sucks. I mean, somebody who has an Amari Cooper jersey, it really sucks. But, I mean, yeah, that's what I'm saying. I'm right there with you. So I would do that. I would. I mean, a year ago, it's funny. You bring up the Jets. Remember, it was longer than a year ago, but it was all the would you trade Michael Gallup for Jamal Adams, conversations, whatever. So it would be funny if that's ultimately where Amari wound up.
No.
Yeah.
And Charles Cross does fit the scheme. Like Cowboys. The Cowboys' way seems to be those quicker, athletic, offensive linemen,
Yeah.
We always seem to be, that's what we look for, and Charles Cross fits that, especially, Mississippi State, SEC with the Aggies see that all the time with them, and they play as well in Mississippi State. They play that wide line, so they like to have their offensive tackles playing out wide, so that means they're going to be shorter, quicker, and faster. So that is exactly what you get with Charles Cross. He's very quick in his movement skills, very quick getting out there. He is a lot lighter than the other tackles that you get. Fits the height side of it all. It's more the power running game, but the Cowboys seem to be doing. I think I'm trying to remember statistically how much they use, but they did use their zone blocking scheme more than they use gap power, which sounds a bit weird when you think about how Zeke was running. But with Charles Cross, it does fit. But the only issue that you've got is we're right back to the argument we had before that Charles Cross is literally exclusively a left tackle. That is all he is.
So my reasoning, and again, it ties in with what Brian Broadus was talking about, was I'm going to flip him. I'm going to play him on the right side, and I'm going to bring Lyell back inside.
I can see that. Yeah.
My reasoning for drafting Charles Cross is that he's 6'7", I believe. He's 305 pounds.
Yeah. And
we do not have a competent player that can play left tackle when Tyron goes down. Because going back to RJ, what you said is, Tyron is going to miss 3 to 5 to 8 games. And what you can then do is, when Tyron is out, you play Charles Cross at left tackle, and you bring Terrence Steele in. Terrence Steele has played almost exclusively right tackle for us. So you're not having to do the 3-card shuffle or 5-card shuffle. The Cross will play right tackle. You get used to playing NFL. When Tyron is down, he can play, and Lyell is your left guard. Can I interest you, or is there too much in that?
It's a lot. I mean, but that's where they're at. You have to consider all possibilities. I'm not down with that personally. And that's where I come back to I know this is a different point, but I come back to just move on from Tyron. Just move on, because if you have to have all these contingencies, I mean, you're only hurting yourself. I mean, and that sounds so stupid, but I mean, it's just a reality. And so, I mean, there are worse plans. I mean, it's a good plan. It's just, it speaks to the state that the team is currently in.
Yeah. And also going back to the Charles Cross situation is another big problem with him is that literally because of the way Mississippi State play, he literally has never had to do any run blocking. Literally hardly any. In fact, I can go. I'll check while we're talking now. How many run blocking snaps? Like in 2019, he played 11 run blocking snaps. That's how little they play.
Yeah, and I mean that's probably gone less in the last season with Mike Leach's air raid system.
Yeah, it's his air raid system, exactly. Yeah, and as I say, they play the wide line where they like to push the tackles out wide because that's the scheme as well. So it's all about that movement and quick movement. And as you say, with the air raid, that's what you want.
Yeah. Sorry, I just had to block someone there. But I mean, in terms of saying, let's just talk about Charles Cross just for a second. And as we said, the air raid system. I mean, this offense seems to be moving towards more of a West Coast air raid system. Kellen Moore doesn't seem to place much reliance in the run game, in that power game. Mike McCarthy doesn't seem to place as much emphasis in the run game either. I mean, I think he's famous for the fact he never drafted a decent running back in his time with Green Bay. So is this more building towards what Kellen Moore as a potential head coach wants in having a player like Charles Cross on this team?
Yeah, I know exactly where you're going. Because, one of the things we said in the Fan Rant show is that with Kellen Moore, you get much the same as what you got in Jason Garrett, but inverted. So you've got, with Jason Garrett, you knew it was going to go run, pass, where it seems to be with Kellen Moore, it's the other way, where you know it's going to be pass, run. And that seems to be, so it's much the same, that's what I mean, but inverted. So if they are going to be playing that style of play, and a lot of, I wanted to see more screens for some reason, and we didn't get to see as much of it as I was expecting. And Charles Cross would fit that mold on the left. But again, it all depends what they're going to do with Tyron Smith. If they are going to trade him, because if you are, you're going to do something with him, then you need to go down the road of left tackle. If you do, Charles Cross would be the guy I would go for personally.
Yeah.
He would be my highest pure left tackle, if you like, because he is a pure left tackle in what he does.
Okay. So, RJ, I'm going to throw it over to you in terms of offensive line. Who is your pet cat? Who is your one player you would, I suppose, in the words of Broadus, that you would stand on the table for?
I mean, like I said, I don't have great wealth quite yet. I mean, that's what the next, sort of month to 2 months are for. But for right now, it is Kenyon Green, because I think that involves the least amount of change. If you're going to keep Tyron, I mean, there's no, you can't say like, okay, we'll draft Kenyon Green and play him at left guard, and then we've got Tyron, Kenyon, Tyler, Zach, Mael, boom, 17 games. Like, it will not work like that ever. But I mean, you are kind of in that place that you have to live that way. You kind of have to live for the moment. And so there's a layer of irresponsibility and chaos to any path they choose. I think this one, though, lines up with what their goals seem to be the most, like, given the state of the coaching staff and everything around them.
And I do agree. It'll Kenyon because he covers the left of the line, and the left of the line is where seem to be having the most trouble at the moment.
Yeah, it is. But if we throw it over to you, RJ, because we're not sure if we'll see you before the draft, is there anyone else that you would stand on the table for? I mean, if say it gets to 24, you mentioned those Ohio State wide receivers, the two linebackers, Devin Lloyd and Nakobe Dean. Is there one of them you would jump on the table for?
No, I mean, and again, I feel like I've been so pessimistic today, but I mean that's where they're at. They are not, and it's dreadful to think about because they're not going to do anything in free agency. They're only their roster is only going to get depleted throughout free agency. Yes, they will have the cute little 1-year deals they sign along the way, and we'll have some compensatory picks to dream about, between now and the draft. But that's like none of these players solve anything. Like they will be worse, and so it's difficult to reach a point where you're like impassioned about a player because nobody is a season changer player for you. And granted, like I don't know that everybody felt that way about Micah Parsons. There was a different level of optimism surrounding the 2021 team, but that's where it's hard. Like there's nobody that's going to come in and breathe total life into your team, no matter what position. Maybe Nakobe Dean in one sense, because you can kind of just hope that the defense is going to carry things if they somehow bring Randy Gregory back and don't cut DeMarcus Lawrence. But that's the only. It's all contingent on a scenario playing itself out, not just one player, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And I think that comes back to the frustration then of when the Cowboys lost to the 49ers in the playoffs, is that a lot of the fans are looking at this and going, this team is not going to be this good next year. It's not going to be this good for the next possibly 2 years with what's going on. And then you're looking at teams like the Eagles that have 3 first-round picks. And you're going, they're only going to be a team that's going to get better. So you're seeing us depleting and disappearing, and these one-year deals that are all now starting to take its toll. And then you've got the Eagles that are just like going, yeah, we made deals last year. Our team was depleted, so we made deals, and now look at us. And I think that's where the fan frustration comes in.
Yeah, I mean, they, like you mentioned it, Brian, they got 13 sacks from their best defensive player. They got 11 interceptions from their best defensive back. Like, when will that ever happen again? And like when will either one ever happen again, let alone in the same season? I mean, so and you got to face a really bad quarterback in the playoffs. And it's just it's difficult to square all of that and feel like you can craft a better and easier path. Like, could you be the team that is kind of the plucky, surprise that goes and takes out some bigger foes? Yeah, but the likelihood of that is much smaller.
Yeah. And I think that I don't know. I think the Cowboys can still go to the playoffs with what they've got ahead, but only because of players like Parsons and Dak. They're going to be the thing that carries those teams over the next couple of years until they start. Because I don't think they need to strip it completely all down. It's not a rebuild and start again. It's more of a reload and try and get back up again situation. Because it's the same, we were talking about this last year. It's the same problem as well, again, with the safeties as well. We're down to one safety, Donovan Wilson, Texas A&M. And and that's what we're down to. And I hope they get a guy like, if I was going to get any of the guys back, I'd like Malik Hooker back because of the center field position that he will play. Because I feel that's going to be the issue on the defense with all the other parts missing, with no pass rush and all the rest of it. Because we got we've still got Golston, but again, it goes back to like my argument with like Josh Ball and Simi Fahok and all the rest of them. That you've got Israel Mukwamu there. But you've got question marks. What did we didn't really see him last year, so we're waiting for him. Same with Nation Wright and Golston, exactly the same. That he's going to possibly be our starting defensive end, and it looked promising. But how is he going to develop? And that's really how far the Cowboys will go into the playoffs. Depends on those guys' development.
I think that's well said. It's going to be a long spring and a long summer.
Yeah, and that's really how I'm looking at it. It's developed. Yeah. How are these players down the line going to develop? And if those guys the coaches feel that they're developing well enough, when people are scratching their heads, going, "Well, why didn't they draft a pass rusher?" Or what? Or it must be that they feel that this guy is going to come on enough for them to feel confident to have to pass on that guy and move to the next.
Yeah. One guy, and we'll wrap things up after this.
Yeah, because you need your guy. Yeah.
This is my guy. I've been on this guy since before the season started, and it seems to be everyone got on him in the middle of the season, and everyone now seems to be falling out of love. Tyler Linderbaum, Iowa center. What is happening?
It's the size. It's the anchor that's the problem. And it is what I said to you that when we were talking about him when you first declared your love for him, and I just said he is good, right? But you go back over 3 seasons and over 1,000 pass block snaps, 2 sacks, 4 pressures. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
So he's got it there. The issue is his size because he is a small guy. He's 6'3", sub 300. I think he's gonna. He probably eats some peanut butter sandwiches before the combine.
Steak and Guinness.
He's going to try and pile on the pound, but could that be at a detriment to his athletic profile once he goes down the line? So I don't know. He is good. He is genuinely good, and he's that type of center where if you've got guards pulling or coming stunt wise, he's the guy because he's brilliant in the zone blocking scheme, which is what the Hawkeyes do play, and they play it really, really well actually. And when they do it, he understands. He's got the intelligence and the mobility to know where his guy's at. So if he's off hip with a guy, or he's not hat on hat, if you like, he's off to a guy. He knows who his guy is, and he will be able to make that movement and get to that guy and get hands on him. And he does have as well. Bear in mind, it is an incredible punch. The only trouble is because he's an ex-wrestler in school and college, so he's got that wrestling techniques. But sometimes his fault as well isn't just his anchor, that he does this weird, I think it must be a wrestling move, but he does like this 2-handed punch move. And when he does it, it gets him off balance. And you just think, well, just stop doing it. But it's because he can't seem to, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, he doesn't seem to be able to mechanically know, like he's got the muscle memory to independently move his arms on plays. And that's, I think, one of the things people are looking at going, I'm not so sure about that.
RJ, give us your thoughts on Tyler Linderbaum before we get out of here.
I'm not opposed. I mean, there's I think a consensus handful of guys at the very, very top. I'm okay with Tyler if that's where things fall. I mean, again, it does kind of fit the boring chalk, whatever. Archetype, but that's what it has to be. It has to be a player of that variety, and he fits that mold.
Brilliant. So, anything else?
Hold on. We haven't had yours. What's your take on Linderbaum then? Give us your
Linderbaum for me.
Your plus and your minus.
He's an athletic guy. Yes, has wrestling technique. Played in a conference which is run heavy.
Yeah,
and that's what you want. For me, that's where I want to see this O-line going. Is a center who can hold his guy, who knows his assignments, and who is not putting the quarterback under pressure by throwing the ball over his head. Because for me, our center this season has been inconsistent, and at times our quarterback hasn't been relying on him. I want a guy beside Zach Martin who is going to open up that A-gap and allow Zeke Elliott to run through that lane. That's what I want to see. And I think Tyler Biadasz can do that. I think he can get that extra bit of weight on. I know the knock on him from a lot of people is, well, he's in a Big Ten program. He's been in a wrestling program and he can't put on weight. Again, you can add weight, and I think he will add weight by the time he gets to the combine. But I can understand if that's not the pick.
Yeah, and you do see a lot of Linderbaum's success come because of how Iowa play. Their style of play fits well with what his strengths and weaknesses are. But bear in mind, this is the guy who's the Remington Trophy winner. So that says it all to you. And in the Big Ten, that's a big deal.
Yeah, but let's not forget Tyler Biadasz is also a Remington Award winner as well.
Yeah.
But I think with that, I think we can wrap up tonight's show. RJ, if you want to give a shout out to yourself and the team at Blogging the Boys, where can people catch you?
Sure. Bloggingtheboys.com, obviously kind of a hub for everything we do. We have a YouTube channel. You have a podcast network. Just search for Blogging the Boys, obviously on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Our podcast network, we have 2 shows that drop every single weekday. 2 different shows, different voices, different talents. So you get a wide-ranging amount of Cowboys views. I'm obviously on there a few times throughout the week myself. We have a show on Saturdays.
It's a beautiful voice.
Well, I mean, it's a little bit baritone. Saturdays, we have a show that's entirely spoken in Spanish. And on Sundays now we have the World's Team with Paul and Meg. I'm on Twitter and Instagram at RJ Ochoa, so everything I do is kind of pointed right there. And tomorrow, when Man United plays, I'll either be really happy or just really depressed that none of my sports teams are able to accomplish anything. So, a lot of my my joy rests within tomorrow's match.
Absolutely. And look, at the end of the day, you can still slag off Jamie after the weekend, and we'll make sure to get plenty of abuse sent his way. But Mike, you will be back on Thursday night, I believe, at 9 o'clock.
Yeah. Mickey Spagnola.
Yeah, I'm just literally checking my mails. It's at this point, yes, he should be available. So
nice.
You should have Mickey Spagnola along for Thursday night's show.
And there is literally a guy who's forgotten more than I know, but only because he's been around so long. Hopefully he isn't watching this and he's taking offense to me calling him old. But there's also as well on Thursday, we are dropping our draft day show, which isn't a 24-hour show this time. We're not doing that again.
Wow.
I know.
Are you sure, Mike?
No.
Are you sure?
We're not doing 24 hours.
Are you
but
sure?
We are doing 24 hours, but it's over 3 days. So the ad for that we're dropping on Thursday, which is really nice. All I'm saying is when me and Paul finished it, we watched it the first time. I was wearing my Apple Watch, and it was like, your heartbeat seems to be elevated, but you're not exercising. I was like, that's right.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the boys will be on and we'll be talking more draft. It's more topical. That one seems to be a broader conversation. This one's more in depth, which is why we have to get RJ in.
Absolutely. But look, as always, we'd like to thank RJ for his contributions, and thanks to everyone for tuning in. And we will see you on Thursday.